Hi all, welcome to my new little vlog here. So before us, I'll be cutting out now a pair of trousers, pure bespoke way. So I'm sure some of you have been following me, how I've been cutting out a draping and cutting out a bespoke jacket and a waistcoat. So I combine, I'm pretty unique because I combine both pure bespoke tailoring, just like Savile Row, but also design pure couture as well. So I combine both. So hopefully some of you are getting some tips and tricks from me, how I do things, and that will inspire you. So before us, I'm going to complete the pair of trousers now. That will complete the very first suit for my fashion show and concert next February. So I've got a lot of work to do during the next few months. So before us, I've got that lovely tartan wool, pure wool, lovely. And this is what I'm going to cut the trousers out of. For that, I'll put that aside for you. Now I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you little glimpses into how I cut trousers, the pure bespoke method. I'm not going to give you everything, because I'll just give you little glimpses, because this is what I teach. So if some of you want to come and learn from me, pure one-to-one, I don't do classroom settings, because you will learn a lot from. I will teach you how to pattern cut and actually how to make up a pure bespoke pair of trousers, the same way that Savile Row does. There might be some variations along the way, because every tailor's got their own methods. But Savile Row charges about £1,600 for a pair of trousers. I'm going to show you that method. So I'm going to show you little bits and bobs. I'm not going to give you all the trade secrets, because you'll have to come on my course to learn the trade secrets. So, right, before us I've got a lovely, this is Nisha's measurements here. So she goes in between a size 10 to 12. Most women have 3 sizes within their figuration. In all of my bespoke suits I make, trousers, you'll see I always leave an inlay. An inlay is extra fabric that if a client puts on weight, we let it out. Simple as that. So we're going to make the trousers on the pattern, because I'm going to grade this up to a size 12, 14 and 16 afterwards. Usually we do direct drafting, so we would I'd actually cut it out on fabric, and that's what we call direct drafting. Most tailors do that method. So I've got all of Nisha's measurements here, and a good method, because we'll always work on a quarter of the pattern in the bespoke world. We always make our trousers a quarter of the pattern. So we always make the top side first, and then we use the top side as a template to make the underside. So because we're making a pattern, a quarter of the pattern only, I've already got Nisha's waist, seat, knee and hem measurements. I've quartered it. So I've halved it and quartered it. It just saves a lot of time and effort when you work things out beforehand, before you make the patterns up. Just quarter of your patterns, and that's the way we do things. Now there's many formulas, many methods you'll see on YouTube or wherever, all these free tutorials. But if you want to learn the correct way, I do suggest you learn from a professional in the industry. You cannot go wrong. A lot of YouTube videos leave a lot to be desired, and so please don't follow a lot of their stuff. Most are not professionals in the industry, so just be careful what you actually learn. So I'm going to show you the real bespoke way. Little glimpses, as I said. I'm not going to show you everything, because this is what I do for a living. So you'll have to come on my course if you really want to learn everything. Anyway, I've got all my rulers here. Got my lovely hockey stick. There we go. This is my ruler for my outside seam. Sorry, not my inside leg seam there. This is another ruler for my outside seam here. I've got my meter ruler. I've got my L square, which you need. So you can use an L square, or for quick, I use a grading square, because it's got your lines and you can right angle things off very, very quickly. But most will use that L square as well. And on my courses, I provide all of these free for you. Most of the rulers, I think I'm on the only course that provides, in England, that provides everything free for the student, including beautiful wool fabrics that you get to keep, we make out, and all the rulers free as well for you to keep. And everything, all the chalk, pencils, I even give you a notepad and pens, Sharpies and whatever. So there we have it. Now we've got the rulers there. So I'm just going to draw a line down on the paper, and I'm going to use a Sharpie. Usually you would use a pencil or a pen or whatever, but for the camera's sake, you can see what I'm going to do. I'm just going to draw a whole line with a meter ruler. There, just going to bring this back. I don't want to go to. I want to get the view in the camera view of it. So I've got to be a bit careful that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm just going to just draw a line down. I'll just extend that line down. So this is the very first thing you do. So basically this is your outside leg measurement. Now I've got Nisha's outside leg measurement, which I've got 41 inches. So I'm going to measure from the top. This will be your waist here, and we can see that. Let me just pan this here, there. So your waist, I'm just going to bring this down a little bit so the camera can see this. So I'll put the waist in there. So hopefully you can see that there. So the waistline will be right at the top here. I'm going to just square all that line off. Just continue that line a little bit there. And then from that line, we get the outside leg measurement. Now, you've got to take off your waistband. Whatever your width of your waistband, you take that off. So my waistbands are always 1.5 inches. So from that waistline, I go up 1.5 inches because that's taken off the waistband now. And then I come down and get the 41 inches. And there's my 41 inches there. Hopefully you can see that there. So I've taken off the waistband there, 1.5 inches. Just bring it up to the 1.5 inches. Past that waistline. So there's my outside leg. That's the bottom, that's the hem. Now from the hem, we get the inside leg measurement, which is 32. So I'm going to come up 32 inches there. And that will be my trouser rise. That's my inside leg. Usually, if you minus your outside leg, you get your outside leg, minus your inside leg, you get your trouser rise, and that's the way we do it. There are some other tailors that will just get the trouser rise, and they use a different formula, but I use this formula. So just take your outside leg, minus the inside leg, you get your trouser rise naturally. Now from this inside leg, I'm just going to go half of that for my knee measurement. So I'll just bring that tape measure in half, right down to that hem. This is an easy method for you to do. Then crease that tape measure in half, place that little mark, just that tiny little mark there, and from that mark you go up 2 inches to get your knee measurement. And there we have that. Now we've got 4 lines. We've got the waist, we've got the trouser rise, with the seat area, which is not the true seat area. We've got your knee and we've got the hem. So we've got 4 lines now. So I'm just going to square the other lines off. You'll see. So that's why I use my grading square, because it's quick to do it. But a lot of people will use an L square. So we can use your L square. So just make sure that's aligned on the side seam. Get that. And then once I'm happy with that line there, it's aligned correctly, then see, I've drawn my line. I use my grading square, it's quicker. So I'll just get my grading square. You can see I've got my line there, and that's squared off now at right angles. Get everything at right angles, and I'll just extend that line there. So everyone's got their own little methods, and I'll get my hem here, square that off, make sure everything's at right angles. Get my hem, just extend that line down across, and there we have it. We've got our 4 lines now. So we've got our waist, we've got our trouser rise, where this will be kind of virtually where the fork line will be. We've got our knee and we've got our hem. Now the very first thing we're going to do, we're going to establish our seat width, our measurements. Now our seat is 37. I've quartered this already because we're working on a quarter of the pattern. So see, I've already got it here, half, I've got quarter, 9.25 inches. So from this seat line here, we're going to go across 9.25 inches. And I'll just mark that. And I put about 1/2 inch ease, even though I put a little bit of ease, it's better to have a little bit bigger. And then that can be trimmed off if it's a bit big. So I'll put about 1/2 inch ease, roughly about 1 centimetre. Then I'll square that line up. And this line now will be your fork, where your zip's going to be. There we have that. Now, there's formulas to get the fork angle and the fork width. A lot of tailors will go a scale. I think it's 1/6 of the seat measurement scale. So they'll use a seat measurement as a scale, and I'll half a seat measurement, and I'll do 1/6 or 1/5 or whatever to get various lines. I just come out 2.5 inches to get my fork line here, which is adequate. Now we're doing women's. Sometimes it can be a bit less for a woman, but I'm just going to just do this. I can adjust this on the pattern anyway. I always come back 2.5 inches there. Now what we're going to do, we're going to get the fork, our crotch. So from that seat, I'm going to use that as my guide, and I'm going to I use my chalk for everything to get my curves. I don't use French curves. So now I'm going to get I'm going to use a different chalk colour, you'll be able to see. So from here, I'm going to come down, and then I'll just get a nice little run. And I'm going to come, there's my fork, and there we have that. And then to get my back seat line, because you've got your hips, the backs to measure it, I'm going to come up 3 centimetres, and I get my back seat line here. And there we go, that's the first bit. I'm going to carry on with this now, because I don't want to show you all of my trade secrets here. But you can see it's starting to take shape now. I've already got the top. I'm going to establish my inside fork line. I'm going to establish the crease line. And then you'll see me on my next little segment. This will be finished, and I'll use this to cut out my underside. Right everyone, here we are. So now I've cut out my top side, what we call the top side. I put Nisha's measurements in there. So if you're doing yourself or a client or whoever, friend, always put the name and the measurements. So I always put the outside leg, inside leg, waist, seat, knee and hem, so it's already there. Now I just want to briefly talk to you about something that's a little bit contentious in the bespoke world. So you can see here I've got my darts. Usually the darts are in the centre of the crease line, where your crease line of the middle of the trousers are going to be creased. Usually your dart or your pleat will be there. This is going to be a dart. Now in the bespoke world, some tailors will actually put the dart halfway between the crease line to the side seam. That's virtually where your hip bone is. And some tailors will actually swear by having the dart there. Actually, you need it where your hip bone is. It will fit better over that area. Some tailors that taught me didn't believe in that method, so they always did it that way. So for many years I did it that way. But my great Irish tailor, who's been teaching me some of these methods for jacket cutting, he's always sworn by this method, going where the hip bone is on near the side. And I've done that, and it does fit better on my clients. So I am going to offset that from the centre line, and I'm going to put it here on the hip, where the hip bone will be. So I'm going to do that. It's a bit contentious in the world. Some tailors don't believe in it, some tailors do. It's trial and error. And I always say, even though I'm making this pattern out, I'll still make the trouser up. But if you're a beginner, always please make a mock-up. I mean, I'm a professional industry, so what we do, we leave extra fabric. So if you're going to do it this way, leave extra fabric on the inside of the back, leave it on the waistline, and sometimes you can leave it on the back, on the side seam here as well. And you always leave your inlay about 3 inches on the hem as well. So we do that when we're actually cutting it out onto the fabric. But if you're going to make a mock-up, always make a mock-up if you're not, you're not used to making trousers up. But as I said, when we make trousers up, we still leave inlays everywhere, and where the back crotch seam is as well. So there we have that. Now, I'm just going to show you a little more glimpse into cutting the back. So this is a quarter of the pattern now. So now we use the top side now to create the underside, the back. And this is what we do in the bespoke world. I'm not sure, there was a sewing member saying she done half a pattern. I'm not sure how. I think there are some books that I think they sit side by side, the back to the front. It's not a very good method. You'll get an accurate way if you cut the top side first, and this is your template to cut the underside. So your underside always is derived from your top pattern, and that's the best way. You'll get a better fit as well. So I'm just going to get my knee line in now. And I'm going to get my crotch line here, where my fork line is. there. They're the most things. Now, I always leave, some tailors will equal their seam allowances, now equal side. I don't do that. There are many methods. I do all on the inside. So my 4 seams, so you've got 2 seams, the top side on the side, either side, that's 2 seams, and then 2 seams on the underside. I put all the 4 seams on the one of the underside. See, 4 seams, and on the bottom, I don't know whether you can see the bottom here, if that's in view, I'm not too sure, but I'm putting it on the hem. And then what I do here, I'm going to extend this line out here, and I'm going to extend this line about 1.5 centimeters. This is where I've got to alter a little bit here. It works itself out. This is my underside crotch seam, will come down roughly about 1.5 centimeters. But then I walk the pattern. You always walk your pattern afterwards, and that will establish where my underside crotch is. And you always walk your pattern on here to get your side of your underside. They've got to reflect each other. They've got to marry together. Remember when you're stitching them up. So I'm just going to put that line there. So it's a provisional line I just put there. And then what I do, I've marked out my 4 seams. So I'm going to put my 4 seams here, my side seam. But you've always got to have fittings. There's no such thing as a perfect pattern, and I say that to everyone. It's the mock-ups and the fittings that will create your perfect master pattern for you. So once I have the mock-up on Nisha, I'll tweak it here and there, and then I'll put it back onto the pattern. And then once her mock-up is perfect, I know then once I've tweaked the pattern up, this will be a perfect master pattern. Then I'm going to grade it up to the different sizes. So I've still got to make the mock-up, but in the real fabric, I'll make the mock-up with the extra inlays as I was saying to you. Right, okay, now that's that sorted there now. So I'm going to establish the angle of the back seam here, and then I'll establish the top waistline there, and then I'm going to establish here. So I'm going to get back to some, as I said, I'm not going to give you all the tips, all the tricks of the trade here, all my trade secrets. If you want to come on my course, then you'll learn everything. So I'll see you at the end of this when I finish this. Right, as you can see before us, I've finished the trouser pattern. So there we have it. So I've drafted the top side, then I drafted the underside. Now this is the best method when you're going to create your trousers. You'll always draft the top side first, and this is used as your template to create the underside, and you get an accurate trouser pattern. I know there are some books they draft half the pattern together, and it's not a good method, and you know it leaves a lot to be desired, some of these pattern cutting books. But anyway, all tailors will use this method which I'm showing you now. It's the best way to cut your trouser pattern, and you'll be more accurate. Now, one little tip of the day before I go, and if you want to learn real bespoke trouser cutting and making, seek out a professional tailor or go on a tailoring course, but make sure they are proper bespoke tailors. Or I do one-to-one at my shop in the city centre, so 5 minutes walk from the street train station. I've got a car parking space behind my shop, and I will teach you how to cut real bespoke trousers and make them up, just like Savile Row. And Savile Row charge about £1,700 for trousers. I do the same method, but a lot cheaper. So a little tip of the day for you here. I've notched the knees together. You need to walk your pattern. You've got to make sure you're accurate when you've cut your patterns. And this applies for everything you make up, whether it's dresses, jackets, waistcoats, whatever, trousers, whatever. You always walk your pattern, shirt making, whatever. So you can get your little awl, or just use your finger, doesn't really matter. And just place one pattern on top of the other, and then just go from your notch, wherever it's going to be, the bottom of the side seam to the top, whatever. And just get your awl or whatever, and then just pivot your pattern as you go along. Can you see? I'm using my little awl there, and I'm just what we call walking the pattern. It's very important. And you do the same when you're making shirt sleeves or blouse sleeves. You walk the sleeve pattern along the armhole, and I teach that on my shirt making course as well. And now you can see I've walked the pattern. It's exactly level to the top. Because remember, you're going to be stitching the one pattern to the other. So that you're going to be stitching the top to the bottom or vice versa, and they've got to be the same length. If you haven't got the same length, if there's a discrepancy, just chop off whichever is the longer and you're good to go. So hopefully there's a little tip of the day for you. So hopefully you've learned a thing or two along the way, and I will see you on my next outing, everyone, and ciao for now.